Hello everybody, I want to thank you for joining me. I feel inspired to share. I had a question come in and I thought it would be a good opportunity to read it, take a look at it, and see what comes up for us to heal. It says, I have a question for you regarding how to redirect my thinking. I have been being so positive and capable of redirecting my negative thoughts, which has made me so much happier, but today I had something happen that has stumped me. My apartment was broken into, and after I got over the initial shock of it, I tried to make it positive or see the lesson. And I'm able to do that, but I can't get over the fear part. Maybe I just need an outside perspective because it is so fresh. I had barely anything taken, which is not a problem. I didn't mind cleaning up the mess they left, and I don't care about the reason they did it, but I can't get over the repetitive thoughts about the situation. Any ideas or tips? I can't change the fear part of being vulnerable. Yeah, there's a few things that come up for me. I can't change the fear part of being vulnerable. I can't change the fear. The Course talks about we cannot, there's no point in trying to master fear. There's no point in trying to control fear because we made fear. The ego is a symbol of fear. All fear is of the ego. The ego is not real. Therefore, any attempt to try to control fear is simply another self-concept, another aspect of the ego's thinking to keep it real. In other words, fear is not real. There's no independent source of fear. It's illusory. And so when we try to control it, we are believing in it. And there's a self-concept that believes it's controlling it. So it may, in this situation, come out as the self-concept of, I'm the person that has to think positive. And so when we think positive, or when we think we need to think positive, we are trying to basically cover up what's really there. In other words, we have this experience of being broken into, and we may be pissed, and we may be fearful, and we may be upset, and we have all this stuff that seems to be coming up for us, coming to this, perceived situation where our house is broken into, and then we try to put positive thoughts on it to help us feel better. We try to think positively about the situation. We try to think, oh, there's a learning lesson in this situation. But when we think positive, or we try to think positive, we're actually covering up. And so it may give us a sense of temporary relief, but it does not heal the underlying issue, which is there's fear in here that needs to be healed. And so the only way for that to be healed and dispelled is to look at it. The other thing to be mindful of is if we're thinking positive, then there's an inference of negative. So there's still a dualistic perspective. And so the healing is going to come from dismantling the negative beliefs, but it's not something that we do. Our willingness is simply to see it differently. We have to recognize that what we're seeing, okay, so I'm feeling very vulnerable, I'm feeling afraid, I'm having regret thoughts, I'm having thoughts of what to do next, and I'm feeling anxious. And so we're looking at that. We're inviting Holy Spirit, we're inviting awareness to show us something different. And we're looking at it with the Holy Spirit so that it can be dispelled, knowing our truth. I want to know my invulnerability. The truth is we're not afraid of being vulnerable. We're afraid of what we believe being vulnerable means, or what that feeling is. We're afraid to be vulnerable, but in truth we can't be. But until we let down our guards, until we let down the perceived idea that we can actually protect these bodies, that we can protect our thing, things. Until those ideas are let go, we have to be, from a worldly perspective, or from a perspective in this world, it seems fearful to be vulnerable because this world certainly, there's a lot of vulnerability in this world. But if we allow ourselves to come from a place of truth and a place of spirit and feel into what that vulnerability feels like, we become invulnerable because we're willing to live in our truth. We're willing to not be prison to the fear of being vulnerable. Of course, the miracle says, in our defenselessness, our safety lies. That's what it means to be defenseless. It's to step into that sense of vulnerability and realize that we're not vulnerable. There's nothing that can harm us. We are not our bodies. And so we want to step into that truth, even though the reality that we experience seems so real. But buying into the realness of the reality is not going to get us free. It's not going to get us to the peace that we ultimately want. And so the healing process is to bring up our fears, bring up what's coming up for us, and looking at it, expressing it, sharing it with others, not from a victimization standpoint. It's not about expressing ourselves as victim, but it's expressing ourselves in the thoughts that we're having. The thought that I lost something is coming up. The thought that I'm going to be hurt in the future. The thought that I'm not protected. Those are all the beliefs we want to come up and look at it with the Holy Spirit and forgive them. It's not of our doing. We're not in control of that. Our intention is to come to a place of true sight. So yes, these are what my thoughts are, but I'm determined to see it differently. I'm determined to see it in truth, and then let it unfold as it will unfold, and it will unfold. It will unfold in peace. It becomes, when you can look at the thoughts that are seemingly, creating this disturbance, there's a sense of peace that comes by looking at it, because when you look at it, you recognize you're not it. You are not that. You are not that scenario that you're playing out in your head. You are not that thought that you have. There's a greater awareness that emerges and wakes up, and that's the perceived process of awakening. There's a greater truth that becomes more and more real. It's about finding our invulnerable truth, not in the form of a body. The body is going to die. The body can get hurt, yes, but we are not the body. So our experience, the experience that we're aiming for, is not of the body. Peace is not of the body. Love is not of the body. Complete wholeness is not of the body. Eternity is not of the body. So we are, the intention is to come into truth. So that's what we're moving into. And the only way we can do that is by bringing the awareness of truth, which is the Holy Spirit, which is the inner guidance. We want to bring the awareness of truth in during these circumstances. The question says, I was stumped. I was having all these positive thoughts and I was stumped. That's what the ego thought system does. It stumps us. It brings into our awareness something that we weren't aware of. Because what we weren't aware of is what is hidden in the unconscious mind, the fears that are hidden in the conscious mind. These thoughts are not new thoughts. They're just showing up based on the interpretation of the circumstance, interpretation of the situation. They're coming up. So the choice is really, do I buy into these thoughts and keep this circular experience of fear in my life, or do I let it come up and now use it? There's no really lesson in the situation other than that it's coming up for healing. It's coming up for forgiveness. The only purpose that any of this stuff comes up for is for forgiveness. Oh, I'm stumped. I'm feeling fear based on this interpretation. How can I interpret this different? Holy Spirit, I'm seeing something that is not there. I'm seeing thoughts of the future and my vulnerability. I'm seeing thoughts of being victimized. I'm seeing thoughts of losing aspects of myself with the stuff that I own is now gone. There's a whole self-concept to explore there, this idea of ownership. For me, I know there have been many instances where things may have been taken or lost, or I had a car broken into, and the thought is, oh my God, I got to spend $150 to fix the windshield. I just lost $150. But that's all based on a self-concept of limitation. Oh, so I believe myself to be limited, or identify with myself based upon the funds, or my worthiness is based upon the funds that I have in that moment, and that fluctuates. So does that mean my worthiness fluctuates? No! I'm unalterable, and that is the truth. And that is the truth I want to see. So Holy Spirit, help me see that different. Then there's a space open for peace and love to emerge. And it doesn't necessarily emerge in form, although it can. And perhaps as that recognition becomes more and more real, it is reflected in form. It becomes witness to now a right-minded way of thinking along the lines of spirit, as opposed to thinking along the lines of ego, which would, again, when not addressed, stump us, put us into a place of fear. But rest assured that the Holy Spirit, when invited in, and our willingness to have us see it differently, will come in to shine and dispel those negative beliefs away. That is the practice, that is our practice for healing and the discovery of truth and the joy that is within us, regardless of whatever the outer circumstance may be saying. I love you.